Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 53 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. My name's Andrew Marsh, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's 7 years ago. And I used to be a geologist in the construction industry. And I now work with employers to help them understand and manage people like me, people who have Asperger's syndrome in the workplace. And so each week I have a different topic. People come on and we have a discussion and a Q&A. So if there are things that you want to know about Asperger's, then please feel free to get in touch. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about something that I noticed I did last week on another call that was hosted by someone else. And that is the trait of people with Asperger's to over-explain. Let me explain what I mean by over-explain. Most of us tend to be quite shy and quite introvert, and we will generally keep out of the way, and people will kind of view us differently, and we in the workplace or in social groups, until someone asks them a question about something that they are particularly passionate about. Now, it might be something about work, but it also might be when you're having a cup of tea at break and they'll say, just saw that new Star Wars film. Immediately their information and their alertness will be triggered, because there are some topics that people who have Asperger's are very into. It might be Star Wars or Star Trek. It might be Lord of the Rings. It might be their MRPG game that they play. It could be Game of Thrones or Twilight. But there, there is usually something. Oh, excuse me. There is usually something that they have a particular and specific interest in and like to talk about. That's when they will their demeanor will change. They will lighten up. They will brighten up. Their face will light up, and they will start to show emotion because they are excited about the thing that they're talking about. And they will go on and they will talk about it, and they will talk about it, and they will talk about it, not realizing, because we're not very good at recognizing social cues and body language from other people, not realizing that we are taking up a lot of time and other people might be wanting to interject and be part of the discussion. And if it's a work related thing, which we are, if we're talking about a work situation, you might be asked, how are you getting on with such and such an aspect of the project you're working on? And they will go into great detail about what they've been working on, how they've presented that information, how they've summarized it, how they've analyzed it, how they've done what it is that they've been doing for the last few days or few weeks. And they will really go in depth into what they have done, because they've been asked a question and they then feel that that has given them the opportunity to say their piece, to contribute. And which is welcomed, because quite often they're not asked for their opinion, or they're asked for a very brief opinion. But when someone says, when their boss says or a teammate says, can you give me an update on where we are with that project that you're working on, they will then go into great detail, discussing all the in and outs points, what they've done with it. And as I just said, they will go on and on and on, and not realizing that they are hogging the attention of those around them, because they're not doing it because they want to feel important and to continually talk. They're doing it because, certainly in my case, and I know other people I've spoken to with Asperger's, it's very much the same. They want to give as complete an answer as they can. So it's not just, yeah, well, I summarized it a bit and did it over there, and there's a couple of sheets of A4 paper over there that you've got it on. They will want to know, and they will want to explain what they've done. Yes, I prepared a spreadsheet. It's got 4 different tabs, each with a different color, showing different things. And they will go on and tell you exactly what they have put on that spreadsheet, or in that summary report, or in that document that they've summarized. And they will keep going on about it, and they will talk about it, giving all the nuances, not realizing that someone else, their boss or their teammate, their colleague, wants to interject, wants to ask them a supplementary question, but they're in flow. And when someone with Asperger's gets in flow about something, they really do get in flow. They are absolutely focused on what they're talking about and will go on and on. One of my favorite things to do is I write, as well as working with employers to help them with Asperger's syndrome, I write novels. And if someone wants to talk to me about my writing, I am it's an absolute joy to have someone say, tell me what you're writing, what you're working on at the moment, because I will go on and I will talk. I get very enthusiastic about my writing, and I will go on and on and on. The same with topics like, if someone was to say to me, what 2 or 3 top tips would you have for someone who has just taken over a team and they're managing someone in their team who has Asperger's syndrome? Again, I will knuckle down and I will go into the tips and my strategies and coping mechanisms that you could use and implement and adopt in the workplace to help those people who are on the spectrum in the workplace, because you need to manage them differently. I was on a call yesterday at a conference in Malta, and then we were talking about this very thing about managing people with Asperger's syndrome, and the absolute key person in that situation is the manager. The manager needs to be a leader. They need to understand different methods of communication, because the person with Asperger's might need to be instructed or guided on what you want in a different way to neurotypical people. So it's not a one size fits all. This is, I'm going to send out a 12-page email. Off you go and do it. That 12-page email is probably too much and overwhelming for the person with Asperger's syndrome. They might I'm very visual, and a lot of people on the spectrum are very visual. I might like things to be broken down into short paragraphs, images, pictures, bullet points, short summaries, so that it breaks up the flow of what I'm looking at. And websites are another thing. When I go onto a website and I just see screens of text, I just turn off. I can't cope with seeing lots and lots of text. I like to see a small amount of text, a relevant image, a summary, then another bit of small amount of text, another image, another summary, so that it keeps my attention and it doesn't overwhelm me with just pages and pages and pages of things that, is that all relevant to me? If it's all relevant, can you summarize it down into 3 or 4 points? What are the 3 key points you want to make with this, rather than 12 pages or a 20-page briefing document? It's too much. It's too much to take in, to have to read through it and summarize it. Whereas if you had something that was adjusted to your specialism, to the way that you receive information, in my case, very visual, then I will understand what you want to do better and more clearly than before. So when talking about things of that nature, I do go on because I want to give a complete answer. So I'm going to throw it open to John and see if he's got any comments he wants to make on that, or ask any questions, and we'll see where we go from there. John, have you got anything you wanted to add?
No, yeah, I tend to agree with you. I get, you can almost call it digression, excessive digression. I'll start talking about something and digress, or somebody will bring up a topic and then I'll get into it and digress. Important to me, but not them, in a
Yes.
sense. So it's not that it's irrelevant, just not very relevant to the person in the topic at hand at the moment. And but then I'll just go off on a tangent and just keep running. Yeah, you asked me something about my interest, and yeah, I get into it. And it's like I'm learning that it's not that we're necessarily different from other people in the sense that we have interest and we get into interest just like everybody else. But ours, I can't say fewer and far between, but just not as common necessarily as the other people, the neurotypicals. They tend to be able to generally discuss anything. It's how I see it. I just don't get into a lot of their conversations. I don't understand. It's general chit chat.
Yeah.
It's so I kind of sit back and go, I don't get it. Whatever. I don't have nothing. But then you ask me, then just go and go and go and go and go, and then I get detailed. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on those points. So I hate idle chit chat. It's worse than I'm not interested in it. It actually grates and gets me agitated. If and it really does. It it it, it really is very uncomfortable when you hear a conversation that's about absolutely nothing. When they're talking about what was on the telly last night, or who said this to whom and what, and I just don't care. Not that I want any harm to come to anyone or people being in difficulty. I just don't have the attention span to listen to idle chit chat about nothing. Let's talk about the cosmos. Let's talk about managing Asperger syndrome in the workplace. Let's talk about something exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, I will be engaged and I will be in there and I will be up for it. And my whole body language will change. I will get very up and animated and talk. Um, and one of the things in doing that is when we're not talking because we want to cut other people out in a rude sense. We're talking because, as I said, we want to give as full an answer as we can of all the things that's going on in our head. And that's one of the things that perhaps neurotypical people don't understand, is that our heads are full of information, and we're constantly we're constantly on the go, processing information, trying to understand information. And when we're given the opportunity to make our piece, to say our piece, bam, out it comes. And we, as you said, you go off on tangents. And well, and if we look at it in this point of view, and boom, off you go another line, just because you want to give us full an answer. And one of the ways that when managing people with Asperger's is to be very specific in what you ask them. If you want them to tell you for 15 minutes the status of a project they're working on, say, can you give me a detailed update? Because then you're going to expect a lot of information back from them. But if you want a short précis, then don't say, give me a complete update. Say, just give me just a brief summary of the key points, of the 2 or 3 key points that you've worked on over the last few days. That will then drag their attention to the 2 or 3 key points, so that they're not going to go off on all the other bits of information and updates. They will think, okay, they want 2 or 3 pieces of information. That's what I'll give them. So the instructions or the brief that you give them is very, very important. It's one of my key steps in my 7 steps program that I have on managing Asperger syndrome at work. It's actually the first step, which is clarity of instructions, or the brief. As I say, I used to work as a consultant geologist, and the first thing we did when we got a new project in from a client was to sit down with them and have a meeting, go over the brief. Now, the brief might be a proposal that we had put into them, and they'd said, yes, I want you to do that. You get a letter back confirming what they want you to do and what the fees are on the program and so on. Even with that, I would want to sit down with the client, say, yep, understand the brief, got it in one, but what anything in particular you're looking for, so that you can start to build up a rapport with your client as to what they're looking for, understand the person that you're working for, so that you're building up that relationship. Because there's going to be times when you're going to need to pick up the phone and say, excuse me, Mr. Client, I need to talk to you about something. Have you got 10 minutes that we could talk about something? And you're building up that relationship, and you're keeping them appraised of what's going on. And that's when you would summarize what's going on and give the client a brief, so that they understand how you're getting on with the project. Yes, you'll give them regular updates, a weekly or a monthly progress report, but sometimes there is nothing better than just picking up the phone and having a 10-minute conversation with your client about where you are, whether you've got to a sticking point, and asking the client. They might have an idea. They might have options. It's have that dialogue, have that understanding, and then that way you're building trust with your client, building a relationship, so that somewhere down the line, when you get to a crunch point, or your conclusions and recommendations might not necessarily be what the client thought they were going to get at the beginning, you've got the understanding and the rapport with them, that you can present that to them and have the discussion about it. That's where brevity of by being very clear in your instructions, you will then get a better response from the people that you're working for and working with. And it's really important to do that. So if you are working with someone who has Asperger's syndrome or autism, I use a 3-word phrase: be clear, be specific, and be precise when you give someone instructions, or you're asking them to tell you about what they've been working on. If you do those 3 things, be clear, be specific, be precise, you're then honing them into what you want them to talk to you about, to brief you about, rather than tell me about the project. You're going to get everything. So if you're wanting a short summary, tell them that's what you want. If you want more detail, tell them that's what you want, so that you're building that understanding with the person with Asperger syndrome or autism to find out what it is that you want from them. Because the manager might not have all day to sit down, or they might just want a quick 5-10 minute briefing. Then that's what you do. Say very briefly, just go through the 2 or 3 key points, or what's the current challenge or obstacle that we need to discuss and go through to move you forward. That would be another way of dealing with something. Just say, we'll have a discussion later on in the week about how we're getting on generally, but is there a key point that you need to go through with me to make a decision and guide you in the right direction for what you're doing? So that would be a good thing for the manager to do, just to say, draw out from them what it is that they're getting stuck on or they're having a difficulty with. That way you can advance the project and they know what they're doing for the next few days on that project. So it's all about communication, giving them the opportunity when you say, tell me about so and so, you're inviting them to tell you everything that they know about the project. If you want something different, say so. Be very clear in what you're doing, because otherwise you're going to get to a point in the discussion where you're either going to have to sit there and think, don't know how much longer he's going to go on for, but I've got another meeting to go to. And so you're going to get anxious and we're not going to notice because we don't recognize those signals. So that's an important aspect of communication with someone with Asperger syndrome is yes, they can over-explain, which is probably what I've done for the last 18 minutes, is say the same thing 2 or 3 times. But I've semi-deliberately done that because I wanted to get across the point that when someone with Asperger syndrome is asked about something that they are passionate about or they're working on, they will go on and tell you all the ins and outs and all the nuances and all the key points and all the etc. and what they've done in terms of if they produced any graphics, spreadsheets, images, photographs, and all of those things to be able to visually present the end result. And they will do that, and they will, because they see things, they understand things visually, so they will present information so that they can understand it, hoping that that will be presentable to the person that they're working for. Just going to ask John if you've got anything else you wanted to add.
Well, yeah, I guess how I relate to it is, I agree with everything you said. I guess in my words, when I see other people socializing, I want to socialize, but they're talking about general stuff I'm just not interested in, and I don't know how to I don't know how to pretend to be interested, and I don't want to be rude.
Yes.
Because I hate when someone does it to me. That's looking down on me, looking, and humiliating me. What's the term of it? Hey, don't patronize me in a sense. So there's an aspect of wanting to socialize, and there's a lot of that missing in my life because of this stuff. So it's kind of like a hole, or a missing gap in my life. So when someone does talk to me about my interest, and I, like you say, then you just want to get real detailed, blah, 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 right? That kind of like, it's like overcompensating to fill the hole that neurotypicals don't have, because they can just generally blah 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 blah. That, so I look at that as I almost overcompensate.
Yes.
Fill that in by being more detailed, although I like being detailed and I can get detailed because that's how I think. But I don't know when to stop sometimes, and people look at me, right, and turn around and walk. But whatever.
I get that.
It just got to the point, like the other day I went to McDonald's, and these guys, older guys, a couple years older than me, whatever, and they meet, and they were retired already, and they meet, and there's 6, 8, 10 of them, depending on who shows up, and one I known I did a little work for 30 years ago. Anyway, but he still recognized each other. He's like, kind of like, come on over, like, okay, well, One guy, I'm sitting down. I'm just sat down. 3 seconds later, one of the other guys goes about politics. I'm like, oh, the taboo. Here we go. Don't get me started. I went, oh no, here we go. And I went boink, boink, boink. And the guy got up and left because I got straight specific to the point. Okay. And they didn't like it. So on
Yeah.
taboo, like whatever,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. You're right. And it can come across as being not quite sure what the right word is, but it can come across as being rude, but that's not the intent.
I got to solve the problem.
It, it, it,
He was
it's
complaining about it, and I
yeah,
know the
yeah,
solution. Point, and he just left.
yeah. It's not the intent to hog the conversation, but that's what we end up doing because we don't recognize the cues of the other people wanting to add to the conversation.
Well, he wanted to just generally talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I already know the solution, and it's a big problem out there. And I just answered it. I just gave, here's a solution. Well, there's nothing to talk about in between. Well, then you just leave. It's like, game over.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have been told that sometimes when I get into flow about something that I am hogging the conversation, and that can be rude. I said, well, you asked me a question. You asked me to tell you about it. I'm trying to give you the best answer I possibly can. So that if you've said, when you say, tell me about something, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you all of the things that I think you need to know about it. Unless, as I just said, unless you say, briefly tell me, or tell me the 3 key things, or tell me what you're currently stuck on. Otherwise, I will tell you everything.
Well, on the flip side of that, there's many times someone told me something, the neurotypicals told me something. I went, oh, that's cool. And I go try it, whatever it may be. And then something bad happens. I go back, well, why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't ask. Well, if you would have asked me, I would have told you because I get detailed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's frustrating. It's a two-way street on that. So.
It is. It is. And it all comes down to the relationship you have with the people around you, people in your social groups, or if you're at work, certainly in a work situation, the manager, the role of the manager has changed. Well, it shouldn't have changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years, but it has, and it needs to get, we still need to get better at managing people from a diverse range of abilities, because as I said on this conference I was on yesterday, based in Malta, the 1980s started nearly 43 years ago. When you think about it in those terms, and you think, well, we did it back in the 80s. When people say we did it back in the 80s, they're really meaning 10 years ago. They think that the 80s was 10 years ago, but it's nearly 43 years ago. When you think about the practices that I started working professional geologist in the 80s, when you think about what we did back then and what we're doing now, we need to manage the resources that we have, the people and the teams that we have, in a much more professional way than the old dictatorial, desk thumping attitudes. And construction is particularly bad at that. The desk thumpers and people who absolutely, this is my opinion, and I'm going to tell you it because I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And I've been there. I've been in the meetings with desk thumpers, and meetings having to be called off, or I think we need to take a break for 10 minutes to calm down situations, because things get very heated. There's a lot of money involved in construction. There's a lot of blame and responsibility appointed to various things, and people do get very heated. You can still disagree with someone without them being your mortal enemy. And I think we need to remember that in society and in disputes between nations and cultures, that just because I disagree with you doesn't mean you're my mortal enemy and I'm going to turn up at your house and do something horrible to you, and vice versa. So we need to get away from confrontational dialogue. We need to get into understanding dialogue, and that's an important thing that we need to do, because if you have an understanding dialogue, you're more likely to get what you want from the other person, from the other party, than if you're just very belligerent, very forthright, and you're very aggressive about it. If someone came at me with an aggressive manner, I'm more likely to say no, or or not do it. If they come to me and say, Andrew, I could really do with your help about something. I've backed myself into a corner here, but I could really do with some help. Can you help me? I'm more likely to say yes than if they just turn around at me and say, I want this done by Friday. So what? You know, it's how you relate to the people around you is very important. And that comes down to communication, because you need to have respect for the other person so that you can get what the project that you're working on or the issue that you're dealing with advanced and get a solution and move on. Otherwise, all you're going to do is you're going to antagonize, and you're going to cause people to just put the blinkers up, put the shutters down, and say, no, I'm not doing that. So it's communication, and then how we do our communication is very important with everyone. Doesn't matter whether they have autism or Asperger's, doesn't matter whether they're a different race, different culture, different nationality from you, speak different languages. If you communicate with respect, you're more likely to get the solution or an answer or what you're looking for than if you don't do that. So I'm just looking at the time, and we're rapidly running out of time for the session. So I just wanted to add to anyone watching this on replay, if you are watching and you want to know more about how to manage people with Asperger's syndrome, then please feel free to get in touch with me at my website, which is aspergersmatters.com, or you can email me at andrew@aspergersmatters.com, or you can also get me on LinkedIn at Andrew F. Marsh, and you'll be able to see my picture on the profile. Thank you for joining me today, John. It's been a pleasure having you on. And for anyone who is watching and anyone else, look out on Friday afternoons for the LinkedIn post, which will be what next week's topic will be about. So unless you've got anything else you wanted to add, John, I'll say thank you very much for joining me. And I'll see you all next week. And so take care and goodbye.
Thank you.